Today, I will be presenting on the pedagogical approaches to incorporation of translanguaging in the classroom. Before we can talk about translanguaging, we first have to know what languaging is, which scholars refer to as language as an activity. Garcia says that translanguaging is two of two things. It refers to pedagogical practices that use bilingualism as resource. So this is a pedagogical practice. And then it refers to the language practice of a bilingual person. What I see in this is that the pedagogical approach of translanguaging is for the bilingual student. But Garcia also says that it can be useful for a monolingual because they are then included into a more linguistically diverse learning environment in which they can learn other languages. Garcia also says that translanguaging is the communicative norm of multilingual communities. That translanguaging is bilingual performance and making sense in the classroom. She refers to it as making sense in the way of a discursive learning experience. Garcia says that it involves translation and code switching, which is a shift between two languages in context. In other words, moving from one language to another and maybe back. But she also says that it is not just this. McSwan says that translanguaging values bilingualism as a sustainable resource in its own right, rather than a merely tolerated transition to a majority language monolingualism. So what translanguaging pedagogical approaches and the people who come from this perspective posit is that bilinguals are not two monolinguals in one, rather they are one speaker that possesses one linguistic repertoire. This type of thinking also confronts the notion of languages as autonomous and pure, as per Garcia. And Garcia also says that translanguaging is a complex discursive system of languaging that enables a standard academic language learning. So in other words, this helps to learn standard language, in our case, English. Because bilingualism is so related to translanguaging, I want us to just look at a few quotes about bilingualism. The literature on bilingualism in education has most often treated language groups as if they were static, homogeneous, and monolithic. Bilinguals are multi-competent and process language in ways that differ essentially from those of monolinguals. This is from Garcia saying, Cummins says that the two languages of a bilingual individual are not stored separately in the brain, but coexist and rely on a common and not separate underlying language proficiency. And you could see this in the image that was on the first screen. This is a picture of the language proficiency being the core of the person. And the outward features of this proficiency would be in the spoken language. So translanguaging in the classroom seems to me to be to enable students to connect new concepts with their foundational understanding of their world seen through their language and culture, which would be that base which Cummins talks about, that proficiency. What I'm going to be showing you is taken from Translanguaging, a CUNY NYSIEB guide for educators. It is practical application for translanguaging within the classroom. In this, Garcia posits that this foundation of meaning that I was talking about before must be built off of in order to create a structure which remains fully intact. Before I talk about the more practical things, what I found in this guide is that there were some core items that were essential to pedagogical translanguaging, as per Garcia and other authors. Number one, culturally relevant learning environment. This is essential because it utilizes students' backgrounds and acquired knowledge to, quote, build bridges to content understandings. So this is the whole purpose of pedagogical or translanguaging, or rather the one of the core values is that you start with the individual and their background in order to build on who they are. It also, so for instance, it could focus on the study of culture and social studies in any of these academic areas, science, math, and language arts. For example, looking at social justice issues and connecting them with students' backgrounds through texts. The other thing I saw in here in the guide is that translanguaging has multilingual language objectives. Stress on multilingual, you'll be hearing that a lot. Now, why not bilingual? Because this involves a multilingual environment where a speaker may be a speaker of 2 or more languages. So just as a teacher would create general objectives for their classroom and for a specific class, they could also create language objectives, specific language objectives for students. And this would include creating specific language goals in addition to or in conjunction with class learning objectives. And this approach bears in mind the language needs of the students with respect to their ability and their proficiency in their home language or any other language. So as I already said, translanguaging in the classroom incorporates a multilingual learning environment. It incorporates languages relevant to students' linguistic backgrounds and home languages. This could be applied in the classroom by using multilingual labels, by singing in different languages, having greetings in different languages. And also it incorporates, in some cases, integrated instruction, which merges languages into one classroom setting rather than compartmentalizing them or, creating specific spaces or times or periods for a specific language. So in other words, fusing them into one classroom setting.